Welcome back to our journey through the fascinating world of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime's Light Novel. Let's continue from the last part, where we left.
Damrata and Granville sat across from each other, discussing their failed scheme involving Hinata and the demon lord Rimuru. Damrata, disappointed by the outcome, decided to distance himself from the Razo family until things cooled down. However, a magical call informed him that Hinata had made peace with Rimuru, presenting a setback for their plans. Granville admitted his failure but remained focused on the future. Despite their differences, they agreed that quarreling further would be unwise. Damrata, considering his options, decided to maintain their relationship but refused to agree to Granville's suggestion of hostility towards Rimuru. Granville, feeling humiliated by Damrata's stance, vowed to take action against him once their current matter was resolved. Then Damrata spoke to the boy, leader of Cerberus, about their dealings with the Razos, feeling relieved that matters had been resolved. The boy, showing understanding, discussed the challenges posed by Rimuru and his allies, acknowledging the need to proceed cautiously. They agreed that open conflict would be unwise and decided to lay low for a while. Damrata expressed frustration with the five elders' failed scheme and shared his gratitude for the boy's warning about Hinata's threat. The boy, recognizing Damrata's importance to his plans, emphasized the need for subtlety and restraint. They discussed the shutdown of the slave trade and agreed to dismantle it while protecting their core interests. Meanwhile, Kazalim, the boy's advisor, listened in and revealed her intention to take revenge under the name Kigali. With a mutual understanding, they embarked on a new phase of their operations. After everything calmed down, Rimuru found himself even more tired than when he fought Hinata. He kept this to himself. Then, a big shock came out at an important meeting. The god that the Western Holy Church prayed to was actually the demon Lord Valentine. She had someone else pretend to be her while she did other things. The Crusaders, who Hinata leads, didn't like Valentine. This made more people like the Empire. Hinata knew about this trick but couldn't stop it. Louis, the Holy Emperor, told everyone what happened. He said that Valentine, who was really his brother, had died. Louis didn't seem too sad, but it still bothered him. Hinata had a tough time telling her soldiers the truth. Some were shocked. She said they had to keep it a secret for their safety. When someone said Hinata was forced into this, she got very upset. She also got mad when someone spoke badly of Valentine. Rimuru tried to help everyone relax, but Hinata ended up scolding him. Then, everyone watched Luminous and Veldora fight. This made them realize something. Louis told them Luminous was good and didn't want to hurt anyone. Rimuru promised to keep Luminous's secret. Veldora said sorry to Luminous in a bad way, which made her mad. Rimuru had to step in and give Veldora to her. Luminous was okay with this and punished Veldora. Veldora whined, but no one listened. After the fight, Veldora felt pain when Luminous hit him. It hurt more than dying, which he couldn't do. Louis and Hinata told everyone about Luminous and their plan. Hinata's soldiers were surprised but believed her. The paladins were surprised to see Veldora's real shape. Rimuru wanted to make peace, so he suggested a party. Luminous said yes, and Rimuru introduced her to everyone. Veldora tried to start a fight with Luminous, but Rimuru stopped them from breaking the city. Rigard then welcomed everyone and started a big meal. Even though some people were still a bit worried, they began to have fun and were happy to rest. Rimuru thought they should all take a bath before eating. The paladins were confused because they didn't know monsters took baths. Rimuru told them how nice their baths were. Luminous wanted a bath alone, but Rimuru said they only had baths for everyone. Luminous was surprised because she was used to having baths all to herself. They all went to the baths, but Rimuru tried to play a trick on Hinata and Luminous. He wanted them to go into the men's bath by mistake. Hinata figured it out, so they all went to the women's bath instead. Rimuru was sad he couldn't join, and later Shuna told him off for trying to go with the men. He went back to his own bath, wondering about everything that happened. After his bath, Rimuru checked the new banquet hall. It was big and strong, and they wanted to make it even stronger with Magisteel later. Kids made pretty bowls for the food with clay and plant colors. Rimuru was happy to see how much better life was now. The special food for the night was tempura. Thanks to Shuna's cooking, Rimuru thought back to how hard it was to make Japanese food in this world because it was hard to find the right stuff. But they kept trying and made dishes like fried shrimp and tempura. Rimuru believed food was important for sharing culture, so he worked hard to make new recipes. They had trouble making good white rice, but they tried different ways to make it taste better, like using Shine's special touch. Rimuru also wanted to make a good impression on the visiting demon lord with their kindness. They finished getting ready and waited for the paladins to come back from their bath. In the hall, Rimuru sat between Veldora and Luminous, with paladins and city people around them. The paladins wore yukata and jinbei and looked a bit unsure about the hall's rules. Hinata said sorry for any problems, but Rimuru told her it was all okay now. Rimuru got a little distracted by how Hinata looked but then focused again. They talked about how important it is for humans and monsters to trust each other. Hinata and the paladins said sorry for before, and Rimuru hoped they could all get along better in the future. Shin had mixed feelings about humans but decided to judge them by who they are inside. Team Reborn was also okay with the paladins, and Rimuru let go of any past issues. It was time to eat, and Rimuru didn't want Veldora to wait anymore. Veldora didn't need to eat but really wanted to since he came back. Rimuru raised his glass and they all started to eat. They had lots of drinks like wine and beer. Everyone loved the food, especially the tempura and sashimi from different places. Rimuru told Hinata how they got all the ingredients, and she was amazed. She asked why they did so much, but Rimuru said it was worth it. Luminous liked the food and drinks a lot, even though Rimuru told her not to drink too much. They found a new kind of rice that made humans feel funny. Rimuru was a bit worried but let everyone try it. The night became a fun party with good food and drinks, and they even had friendly contests. Veldora and Luminous drank too much, which bothered Rimuru. Hinata tried to calm them down, but in the end, Rimuru felt a bit dizzy but happy about how well the party went. The next day, Rimuru woke up with a headache because he had made himself weaker on purpose. He thought Raphael was just being annoying, but it was all in his head. They had to meet with Luminous and her people from the Holy Empire. Rimuru didn't want to fight about the past, he wanted to be friends. At the meeting, people from both sides talked openly. Hinata shared her worries about accepting a monster nation because it went against what they believed. She said she felt like getting back at them but also talked about some traitors from the east being part of the trouble. Rimuru guessed that Clayman, who had ties to these traitors, was secretly controlling things. They also thought maybe someone even more powerful was behind it all, which could mean the 7 days clergy were involved. Luminous didn't like this idea, but Louis thought they might just want her attention, so they needed to look into it more. Louis told Luminous about a special ceremony where she gave love energy to the 7 days members to keep them young. Since they were human, they needed this to live longer. They tried hard to stop others from getting the same thing. Louis thought they might have teamed up with the traitors to trick Clayman. Rimuru felt this made sense, like the pieces of a puzzle coming together. Hinata thought maybe the 7 days wanted her gone to help Clayman and keep their beliefs safe. Rimuru suggested they might have wanted Hinata to be killed by Clayman, then control him while their enemies attacked. Luminous said the last member of the 7 days was dead, probably because of a magic crystal ball Rimuru sent. Hinata and Rimuru thought Yuki might be part of this, but Rimuru also wondered if someone was trying to set Yuki up. They decided to be careful and keep looking for answers. After the meeting, everyone started to get along better. Shuna brought snacks, which made the mood lighter. Rimuru suggested they start talking to Hinata's country. Luminous wanted to fix past problems before making friends. They talked it out and decided to be friends and help each other. But Renard was worried about their religion's rules about monsters. Luminous then said those rules were made up by old leaders to stay in power. Louis said the rules were there to keep humans safe from monsters and to make sure vampires had enough blood. Knowing this, they all agreed to work together and not let old fears get in the way. They kept talking about their religion, Luminism, and how it affected people. Renard didn't want to change old rules, but Hinata said they should be honest because of what happened recently. They thought about how to deal with stories about their fights. Rimuru had an idea, but Renard and others were not sure about it. In the end, they decided to try to trust each other more and not be scared of monsters. They planned to make friends with the Dwarven Kingdom and let people in Tempest choose their own religion. They were a bit worried, but they saw it as a chance to help each other and protect those who needed it. After Luminous and Lubelius made a deal, they focused on making their friendship stronger. They shared skills and technology with the Crusaders, helping fix their broken weapons and learning about their special armor. The Crusaders were thankful and let them have a piece of their broken armor, which they swapped for a new set made by Garm. Rimuru gave Hinata a powerful sword called Moonlight. Their team wanted to make something just as strong. They knew they had to be careful with such strong weapons. They also got a sword called Dragonbuster, but weren't sure if it could beat tough enemies like Veldora. They were curious about Hinata's Holy Spirit armor, but then Raphael said they had already figured it out. With that knowledge, they could make it even better. Once they agreed on everything, they got ready to say goodbye to the Paladins with a final meal to show their friendship. The Paladins wanted to stay longer to enjoy the place, so they all had another big dinner. Rimuru suggested making sukiyaki, a dish from his old world, and everyone loved it. Hinata was impressed by how Rimuru could make such fancy food. Rimuru talked about his big dreams for building things, teaching people, and making a new way to talk to each other using a special metal. This made everyone excited to work harder. After the party, Hinata was worried that Rimuru had told secrets about their new communication system. Rimuru felt bad about it, but Raphael helped him feel better. Fritz, who had too much to drink, took some food from Hinata, which made her punish him. The next morning, Hinata told Rimuru about the danger from an army of angels and their plans. Luminous also said Rimuru should be careful with Veldora because of what he did before. Rimuru was ready to fight the angels if he had to. When Hinata and Luminous left, Rimuru thought about how well they were now getting along. Lublius now recognized the Dwarven Kingdom and started being friends with the Jura Tempest Federation. This was a big step for humans, demi-humans, and monsters to work together. Word got out that Hinata, the saint, lost to Rimuru, the demon lord. People heard about it in different ways and had mixed feelings. Some were scared of Rimuru, while others didn't believe Hinata could lose. But the official word was that Lublius and the Jura Tempest Federation made peace and promised not to fight. This made leaders around the world think things were changing, especially since no paladins were hurt, showing that power was shifting. In the Dwarven Kingdom, Gazelle Dwargo, the heroic king, and his team talked about what happened. They heard that Rimuru beat Hinata. Some of them weren't sure if the story was true, which made them argue. Gazelle thought Rimuru might be stronger than they thought, but he still believed Rimuru was a good person. He remembered how Rimuru saved Hinata and beat another bad guy, Clayman. Gazelle was sure Rimuru wanted peace, even though some of his people were worried. Gazelle and his advisors in Dworgen chatted about Rimuru and the big changes happening. Gazelle told them not to worry too much about Rimuru getting stronger. He said their friendship and business with Tempest were important. Gazelle trusted Rimuru and his plans for a better future. This made his advisors agree to support Rimuru more. Some wished they could do things like Rimuru. Gazelle smiled, knowing their support was good for Dworgen. They decided to go to Rimuru's event, even though some had doubts. Gazelle thought it was a chance to make their friendship stronger. In the end, everyone was excited to go, and Gazelle had to figure out who to invite. In Thalian's Grand Garden, Errol Grimwald, a top official, and Emperor Elmesia Elru Thalian were talking. Elmesia looked young and stylish with bright green eyes and shiny silver hair. She was actually much older than she looked because she was an elf. She was small but very smart and powerful, which made her a great leader. Errol and Emperor Elmesia were talking about an invite from a place ruled by monsters. Errol was amazed by Elmesia's beauty but quickly got back to business. He had a letter about going to a demon lord's big celebration and wondered who should go with him. Elmesia felt left out because she didn't go on Errol's last trip to the monster land. She wanted to go this time. They also talked about a baker named Yoshida, who made better pastries that might be sold in the monster land. Errol's daughter had been giving these pastries to Elmesia without him knowing. Elmesia liked the pastries but told Errol he should have known about them. They thought about how to answer the invite, and Errol was nervous about asking Elmesia to go because it would take a lot of planning. Errol respected his niece, Emperor Elmesia, because her dad, his big brother, had died a long time ago. The royal families in Thalian were all different, with some staying out of politics and others getting involved. This made it hard for Elmesia to make decisions. Errol had to be careful because going to a land with monsters could be dangerous, and some people didn't like Elmesia. She talked like a strong ruler about Rimuru, the demon lord, and what he wanted. She told Errol to be careful but also said Rimuru's idea to build a road could be good for them. Errol realized he hadn't thought of that and agreed with Elmesia. Even though he was worried about safety, he decided to send the best Magus to keep her safe during the visit. Ard Mjalmile of the Blumen Trading Company was tired of visitors always asking for money or business deals, especially nobles with sneaky plans. One noble, Viscount Kazak, wanted to start a shop using slaves, which Mjalmile thought was a bad and dangerous idea. He said no because it was wrong and against the law. But then Kazak talked about having an elf slave, which caught Mjalmile's attention because it was rare and not okay. Just as he was about to say no again, Demon Lord Rimuru came in, surprising Mjalmile. Rimuru had worked with Mjalmile before and was good at business. Even though Kazak was rude to Rimuru, Mjalmile stood up for him and stopped doing business with Kazak, choosing his friendship with Rimuru over making money. Mjalmile brought Rimuru to his big house, and the butler welcomed them nicely. They talked about a noble who was causing trouble with his bad ideas about slavery. Mjalmile wasn't afraid and knew he could handle it. They also talked about a big party called the Tempest Founders Festival that they were planning. It was going to be a big event with people from all over, including leaders from different places. They wanted to make it really fun and were working hard on it. They planned to show potions and other cool things at the party, but they were a bit worried about what Shine might do and Veldora's odd ideas. They had to sort those out before the party. Rimuru went to see Mjalmile, and they talked about starting a fast food place. Mjalmile was dealing with a noble, Kazak, who had some illegal plans, but Rimuru told him not to worry. They also talked about a festival they were planning and how they fixed some problems with the Holy Church. Mjolmile showed Rimuru how they were training people for the fast food place and talked about new things they could add to the menu. Rimuru wanted to get his friend Veldora involved in the festival, but Mjolmile was worried that Veldora might scare the workers. They decided to use a different name for Veldora and got 5 people to help him. Rimuru said he would give the workers a bonus for their help, and he was happy that Mjolmile was taking care of everything. They kept talking, and Rimuru felt sure that they would get everything ready in time. Rimuru was excited about the festival he was planning, but Mjolmile felt a bit swamped with everything he had to do, like taking care of Lord Veldora and setting up the festival. Rimuru had big ideas to turn Tempest into a place where people could relax and have fun. He thought about having forest walks and fishing contests. Mjolmile had another idea, an arena for battles like the ones in Inglesia. Rimuru liked the idea but didn't want his strong friends to fight each other. So he thought of building a place for music shows and a big stadium for fights. He asked Mjolmile to get a fighting contest ready to bring in visitors and make some money. Mjolmile was pumped about the idea but knew it was a big job. Still, he believed in Rimuru's plan and said he'd do his best. Mjolmile told Rimuru he'd take care of it all. Even though he felt both thrilled and a bit nervous, they came up with cool ideas for the contest, like using special potions to heal fighters so they could have really intense battles and then sell those potions there. Mjolmile also thought about letting people rent weapons and armor, having official betting, and giving lessons to adventurers. He was really into these ideas and promised to work hard and be part of Rimuru's team. Later on, Mjolmile chose to live in Tempest and asked his worker Bach to look after his business back in Bloomond. He told Bach he'd help him out and give advice. With everything sorted, Mjolmile started his new adventure in Tempest. Rimuru felt good knowing Mjolmile was on board because he was really good with money. Before, Shuna was helping with the numbers, but as their place got bigger, Rimuru needed someone like Mjolmile who really knew what he was doing. They were planning a big battle event, and Rimuru liked Mjolmile's suggestions a lot. So, they decided to build a big arena, kind of like the famous Colosseum in Rome. Rimuru quickly made a sketch with Raphael's help and sent Ranga to give it to a builder named Gob Qu. Then Rimuru had to go see Fuse in Bloomond, so he asked Ranga to make sure Mjolmile was safe while he was gone. Rimuru was a bit worried because Ranga had been acting tough lately, so he reminded him to be smart and not do anything silly. Ranga said he'd be careful, and Rimuru hoped everything would go well as he sent him off with the plans. Mjolmile had secret guards keeping an eye on him, chosen by Rimuru from his best security team. Rimuru could keep track of Mjolmile once he got to town, but he was busy going to see Fuse in Bloomond. At the Free Guild, Rimuru showed his idea and got to talk to Fuse. They talked about some big things that had happened, like the 7 Days Clergy and the Walpurgis Council. Rimuru found out about a way to change names in the guild and thought about using it. He invited Fuse to a big party he was throwing and gave him an invite for the King of Bloomond. When Rimuru talked about inviting Yuki and Milim, it caused a bit of a stir as he left. Outside the guild, a hobgoblin named Gob Iman showed up and promised to help Rimuru. Rimuru gave him the job of watching over Mjolmile without being seen, hoping Gob Iman would learn from Mjolmile's way with people. Rimuru said he'd give Gob Iman a special sword as a thank you if he did well. With all the invites for the Founders Festival sent out, Rimuru got busy with the plans for the big day, excited about getting everything ready. In a room, Ramirez the Pixie was talking with her helpers, Beretta and Trainee, about moving to a more fun place. Ramirez was bored where they were and wanted a change. Trainee agreed, but Beretta was worried about asking Rimuru for permission, thinking it might make him mad. But Trainee was sure Rimuru would be okay with it. Beretta was secretly excited about the move, even though he knew they had to be careful not to upset Rimuru. When Rimuru got back to Tempest, he found out from Ranga that Ramirez was causing a bit of trouble at the Western Gate. She was trying to take over some land without asking. Rimuru went to see what was happening and talked to Ramirez. She explained that she and her helpers wanted to move to Tempest and make a new entrance for a maze. Rimuru liked the idea because it could make Tempest more lively and fun for adventurers. He thought it was worth talking more about it with Ramirez. Rimuru decided to use Ramirez's old house as a resting place and called everyone to talk about it. Ramirez was a bit scared, but Rimuru told her she was safe. He suggested making a safe spot under the fighting arena, but Gob Qu was worried it might not be safe. So Rimuru said they'd put a strong door there, which made Ramirez happy. He asked her to run a dungeon and shared his plan with her. Ramirez was so happy she danced around. Rimuru told her she'd get some of the money they made, maybe 2 gold coins a day. Ramirez was super happy and said yes to the deal. She showed off her special skill Mazzacraft, which let her make and look after mazes. Rimuru was impressed, and they talked about how they could use her skill. They decided to go ahead with their plans to make the arena and help Tempest grow, with Ramirez's help. Rimuru had a plan to make the town more exciting. he decided to build a big arena for battles on one side of the town and a dungeon underneath it. On the other side, near the hot springs, he wanted to put up a theater. They had to build the arena fast for a big festival, but it was a tough job. Rimuru said he would help build it, using what he knew from before. Ramirez and her friend Beretta said they would help too. They all started working together, and Rimuru made a plan. Ramirez showed off her skills by moving tents with her magic. They cleaned up the land and began working on the underground part of the arena. Rimuru was really impressed with Ramirez's magic, and they talked about making a special dungeon. They both got really excited about the idea. Rimuru spent some time talking with Kurobe, then went to see how the work was going. The workers were finishing up for the day, so Rimuru didn't want to bother them and went to Kurobe's place instead. Kurobe's workshop was in a busy part of town. Kurobe showed Rimuru some special weapons and armor that were too tricky to sell. Rimuru thought they would be great for the dungeon and took them. Kurobe also gave Rimuru a special sword he made just for him. Rimuru left feeling happy, thinking about how adventurers would find these items in the dungeon and tell others about Tempest. He also thought about having events in the arena to bring in more people and help the town's business. Rimuru knew there were lots of things they could do to make the town better and planned to talk about it with his friend Benimaru. Rimuru went home to ask Veldora for a big favor. Veldora was busy reading comics, but when Rimuru acted like he was leaving, Veldora listened. Rimuru asked if Veldora wanted his own place in the dungeon where he could do what he wanted. Veldora loved the idea and said he would be the boss of the deepest part of the dungeon. Rimuru told him about making a game in real life, where people would go on adventures in the dungeon and fight monsters. Rimuru was a bit worried about it being dangerous, but he thought Veldora's power could stay inside the dungeon. Veldora was excited to show off his strength and let adventurers try to beat him. Rimuru was glad Veldora liked the idea because he really wanted him to say yes. The next morning, Rimuru and his friend Veldora went to see Ramirez. There was a lot of work going on at the place where they were building the arena because they were also making a maze underneath it. Rimuru told Ramirez to take it easy and not work too hard. Ramirez thought having breakfast first would help her relax. They looked at the work she had done so far, and it was going well. They decided to make a special room for Veldora at the very bottom of the maze. They used their thoughts to talk about how the room should look, and Ramirez used her magic to make it just right. Rimuru brought in some comfy things and comics for Veldora, and Ramirez wished she had nice things like that too. Rimuru promised to bring Ramirez something nice next time. When he came back, he saw Ramirez and Veldora both reading comics and looking happy. They spent the rest of the day making Veldora's room nice. After a week, the maze was all done, with lots of twists and turns to make it interesting. They put places where adventurers could save their game every 10 floors, and Ramirez made special items to help them if they got in trouble. Rimuru couldn't do the same magic as Ramirez, but that was okay. Veldora tried out his powers in his new room, and it was so strong it messed up the maze a bit. They decided to use that room to store magic and make things. Veldora had a good time using his magic in his new place. The next day, Rimuru talked to Beretta and Trainee about what they would do. Rimuru asked Beretta if he still wanted to help Ramirez, and he said yes, which made Rimuru happy. Beretta was supposed to help someone else, but he was glad to be with Rimuru and Ramirez. Rimuru said it was okay for Beretta to stay with Ramirez, and that made him feel better. The maze turned out to be really useful for making magic and other things. Ramirez was really happy to have Beretta and Trainee with her, like a family. Rimuru trusted Beretta to keep Ramirez safe. Now that Beretta and Trainee were officially helping Ramirez, they could come back to life in the maze if they needed to, which made them very strong. Rimuru knew Ramirez could be powerful with her magic, but he wasn't worried because she seemed nice. Rimuru and his friends had a big job ahead of them. They needed to design a maze with lots of floors. The first floor was a large square, and they could change its size if they wanted. They came up with ideas for traps in the maze like poison arrows, floors that spin around, and chests that pretend to be something else. Ramirez was good at setting these traps with her magic, but she couldn't make fire or ice on the ground. Then, Melim showed up out of nowhere because she heard they were having fun. She wanted to join in and even offered to help by bringing in dragons. Rimuru liked the idea and wanted to know more about the dragons. Veldora didn't like being called a lizard and said he was different from regular dragons. Veldora explained that normal dragons were just big lizards, but he was a special kind of dragon with a spirit. There were only 4 dragons like him, and one of them was his brother. Milim had a spirit dragon, which could turn into smaller dragons. She said she would catch some big dragons to help with their maze. These dragons would make each floor of the maze have different powers, like fire or water. The stronger the dragon, the harder the floor would be. Rimuru planned to put these special floors in order, with Veldora waiting as the last challenge. Veldora and Ramirez thought it was a great plan, But Milim wanted to do something even more exciting. Rimuru told her she was doing a great job, which made her happy and ready to go catch the dragons. After Milim left to find dragons, Rimuru started putting traps on the floors of the maze. Beretta and Trainee helped out, and Ramirez watched everything from Trainee's shoulder. Beretta had some weapons and armor from a golem, but Ramirez thought they should put them in treasure chests for adventurers to find. Rimuru agreed and decided to spread these treasure chests all over the maze. They checked the first 10 floors to make sure they were good for adventurers with different skills. Rimuru had a plan to bring back the boss monster on the 10th floor if it got defeated, and made safe places for adventurers to rest every 5 floors. They also talked about selling things like healing potions and snacks in these safe places. Rimuru thought about making the price of special whistles higher so that adventurers would use the maze's services more. They were all set to open the maze and see how adventurers liked it. As they kept checking the maze, Rimuru and the team finished their work. When they got to the last floor, they were happy with what they had done, but they realized they had put too many monsters in the maze. They decided to let Veldora and Ramirez handle the rest. Milim came back with the dragons she promised, which helped control the number of monsters. The big stadium above the ground was still being built, but it was almost ready for the big festival. The maze was already getting popular, and visitors had to buy a special bracelet to go inside. Rimuru thought a lot of people would come to their town for the festival, and everyone felt good knowing the maze was ready. As winter ended and new people started coming to the town, everyone was getting excited for the festival. Rimuru made sure everything was going well and then went back to town. Veldora, Ramirez, and Milim stayed behind in the maze. Rimuru had set up some simple traps on the upper levels for new adventurers. Ramirez and Veldora took care of the harder levels and had fun making them really tricky. Milim had the job of looking after the dragon rooms. They all agreed to put a camp for beastmen on one of the levels and left some levels empty for now. After a few days, Mjalmile came to help at the town. Rimuru showed him his new house and talked with Rigard about the big festival and Mjalmile's job. They both seemed ready for the work ahead. That night, Mjalmile was really impressed with his fancy new house. Rimuru told him that everyone in their town lived like that. Mjalmile liked the idea of adventurers staying in town and working in the maze. Rimuru thought this could be good for business and even bring money from other places. They planned to tell everyone about the big festival and talk to leaders and merchants. Mjalmile trusted Rimuru's decisions, and they shook hands, happy about working together. Later, Mjalmile had a talk with Baidi and Gab Iman. Gab Iman felt bad because he got her protecting Mjalmile. Mjalmile said there had been a few attacks on him, but Gab Iman had stopped them. Gab Iman was upset he didn't catch the leader of the attackers. Rimuru gave Gab Iman a potion that fixed his arm and asked him to stay with Mjalmile to learn how to work with others. Rimuru also thought about making the town safer. Mjalmile showed he was good at planning by sending out invites for the festival and taking care of things. Rimuru was glad to have Mjalmile's help and knew the project would be tough without him. The town was alive with the buzz of the upcoming festival. The arena's construction was on track, thanks to Gopq's leadership and Mildo's creative flair. Mjalmile's team had set up shops that were doing great business with the local workers. Ramirez and Veldora took charge of the dungeon, which let Rimuru take care of other important things. Leaders of different monster groups were coming to town to show respect for Rimuru's new title and to ask for his protection. Some were worried they might not stay loyal if they thought Rimuru wasn't strong enough. In the big meeting room, Rimuru felt a bit out of place in his fancy slime outfit, with his advisors and guards like Benamaru and Shuna around him. Rigard and his son Rigor were talking to the visitors, and 2 teams, Kurenai and Reborn, were making sure the town stayed safe during the big event. Diablo and Hakuro were away at another important event, Yom's crowning, so they missed Rimuru's big moment. But they had their own jobs to do. Back in the meeting room, Rimuru saw how different monsters reacted to him. Some looked up to him, some just watched, and some were scared. The rabbit folk were especially nervous, which made it hard to talk to them. Rimuru wanted to make them feel safe and show that he cared about all creatures equally. During the meetings, Abil, who was Gable's dad and the leader of the Lizardmen, showed a lot of respect for Rimuru's new role. Rimuru tried to keep things casual, reminding Abil that they were all part of the same group and saying nice things about Gable's work. This made everyone feel more relaxed and showed how close everyone in Rimuru's group was. Rimuru asked Abil to keep supporting their group, and Abil promised he would. Gabble didn't catch on until Rigor nudged him to talk to his dad alone. Then Rimuru met with the chiefs of the High Orcs, who brought their families to show how well they were doing. Rimuru told them they were an important part of the group. After that, 2 dryads, Trya and Dorith, came to say thanks and talk about a problem with magic in their forest that was making travel hard. Rimuru said they'd talk more about it later. When they were alone, Trya and Dorith said they wanted to work for Ramirez, the Fairy Queen. This was a surprise for Rimuru, but he said he'd think about it because they were loyal to Ramirez's sister, Trainee. Rimuru decided to move the tree people, called treants, to a special maze where Ramirez lived. When he took Tria and Dorith to see Ramirez, they told her she was beautiful and elegant. Ramirez was happy to hear this and said the treants could work for her. Rimuru thought it was a good idea to have the treants live in the maze, and they agreed to be loyal to Ramirez. He planned a place for them on the 95th floor of the maze, where they could store things, grow gardens, and make honey. They also set up a place for travelers to sleep and a shop for weapons and armor. Rimuru hoped this Labyrinth city would be a nice place for adventurers who finished the maze. He helped Ramirez and the treants move in, getting the city ready for people to live there. The next day, Rimuru was supposed to meet with some important groups, but two groups, the Bovoids and Equinoids, started arguing. They both wanted Rimuru's help because they were fighting each other. Rimuru thought the Bovoids might be good as bosses in the maze, but they were too proud and didn't respect him. Rigurd, who was usually calm, had to step in. Then, suddenly, 3 strong strangers broke into the town. They said they wanted to take over Clayman's job. Xian, one of Rimuru's friends, didn't want Rimuru to get involved and decided to fight them herself. Rimuru was worried but let Xian handle it. Rimuru didn't want the town to be damaged, so he suggested they go somewhere else to fight. The 3 strangers agreed and followed him to the new arena. Xian was very strong and beat them easily. Everyone watching was impressed. The 3 strangers turned out to be the sons of another demon lord, and they wanted to train with Rimuru. Rimuru asked Xian to train them, hoping they would leave after getting stronger, but Xian was excited to train them. After that, the Bovoids and Equinoids were more respectful to Rimuru. He forgave them for their earlier behavior and offered them a chance to work for him in the maze. Rigurd wasn't sure at first, but he understood Rimuru's plan and warned the groups not to cause trouble again. Rimuru had a busy day. First, he met an elf elder who was really thankful because Rimuru had helped the elves during a war. Their home was destroyed in the fight, so Rimuru invited them to live in his town. The elder was very happy and said he'd bring his people soon. But Rimuru was worried about some elves who had disappeared and thought a bad guy, Viscount Kazak, might be involved. He sent his friend Soai to investigate and thought about asking Imjalmile for help too. Rimuru had a dream to open a nightclub for elves and hoped nothing would mess it up. While getting ready for a big festival, the Tangu, a group of bird-like people, came to talk to Rimuru. They were led by a young woman. Benimaru, one of Rimuru's friends, had already visited them to ask if they could build a road through their land. Benimaru looked tired when he came back and said the talks went okay, but Rimuru felt something wasn't right. Later, Benimaru told him there were some problems during the talk. Benimaru, Alvis, and their team had gone to the Tengu's secret place in the mountains. A young Tengu warrior met them, but only let Benimaru and Alvis go in. Inside, they met Momiji, the daughter of the Tangu elder, who was a bit suspicious of them. Benimaru asked if they could build a road and a tunnel, and Momiji thought about it. But then Alvis and Momiji got into a little fight, showing off their skills. Benimaru stopped the fight before it got worse. They talked to Kaidi, the Tengu elder, who knew Benimaru's teacher, Hakuro. Kaidi wanted Benimaru to marry Momiji, but Momiji wanted Benimaru to like her for real, not because her mom said so. After some talking, Kaidi said they could wait on the marriage idea and mentioned she wanted to be friends with Rimuru. She was sick and hoped Benimaru could help Momiji later on. Understanding this, Momiji got ready to meet Rimuru. Rimuru's day was full of surprises. First, he found out that Hakuro, someone he knew well, had a daughter named Momiji. This news was as confusing as when he first met his friend Benimaru. Momiji came to show how tough she was by fighting Alvis, and thankfully she wasn't angry after the fight. Rimuru decided to wait to meet her before thinking about her marrying Benimaru. When Hakuro came back, they talked about the marriage idea but couldn't decide what to do. Momiji also told Rimuru about some trouble with a person named Frey who wanted to control a high place called Elman Thalion. But when Melon went missing, Momiji realized she got the wrong idea about the whole thing. Rimuru told her it was all a big mix-up. After talking with Momiji, they found out that a Tengu warrior would look at their agreement instead of her. They decided to wait on building a tunnel and promised to help each other if there was trouble. Then, they got a letter from Momiji's elder, which made her blush because it talked about her childhood. Hakuro then told everyone he was her dad, which made Momiji cry. He said he'd help her win Benimaru's heart, which confused everyone. At the same time, Shuna gave Benimaru a message from Alvis, who wanted to marry him and challenged Momiji to a fight for his love. Benimaru didn't know what to say, showing he wasn't sure about love. Rimuru made a joke, but then Gada reminded him of his own love problems. Everyone started talking about how popular Benimaru was with the ladies, and it turned into a big funny mess. They all laughed about Benimaru's situation, with Gata teasing him about all the girls who liked him. They talked about who Benimaru might end up with, and Geld hoped he'd find someone special. Gabil felt a bit sad because he wasn't lucky with girls. Soai started to tell a story about a lady knight who liked him, but they got interrupted. Shuna brought the conversation back to Benimaru, who said he wanted to be with just one person. Momiji agreed to Alvis's challenge to fight for Benimaru's heart, and Rimuru was okay with it as long as they didn't really fight. But Shuna said something that made it sound like there might be more trouble later. Alvis started trying harder to win Benimaru, and soon there was a big competition for his attention. This started a new thing in Tempest where people showed their love by competing. In the evening, everyone finished talking with the Tangu and got together for a big meeting. They had the usual leaders there, plus Veldora, Ramirez, and her helpers, Beretta and Trainee. Milim was going to visit, but because she had some issues with Frey, she decided to go back home for a bit. They also met Mjalmile, who was new and would help plan the Founders Festival. He might also handle money stuff later. Mjalmile was a bit shy but excited as he told them about the festival. There would be a big party for the whole city, a fancy dinner for special guests, and lots of fun events. Everyone was looking forward to the festival, which would show off Tempest's cool culture and new inventions. They were all impressed with the big stadium they built, and Veldora was happy to run a food stand. Mjalmile and Veldora got along well, which was nice to see. After Mjalmile shared the news, Diablo, Hakuro, and Geld paid close attention since they missed the earlier plans. Ramirez mentioned a problem with the dungeon's lower levels getting filled with too many trees because of Veldora's magic. Veldora said they also lost some big monsters because the trees were using up all the magic. They picked Adelman to be the boss for one floor and Zijin for another. Ranga suggested a fox spirit named Kumara to clean up some other floors. They didn't realize how strong Kumara was until it turned into a huge nine-tailed fox, but they were okay with it and let Kumara do its job. Everyone was happy about how the dungeon was turning out, and Rimuru even patted Kumara on the head. When they finished talking about the festival, Rimuru wanted to hear what Soei had found out. Soei said that a hero named Lightspeed Masayuki had beaten a bad group and was now famous in the Western nations. Some people thought he might come to challenge Rimuru. Rimuru didn't want any trouble, especially not during the festival, so he told his team to be nice to Masayuki. The festival was only 3 days away, and Rimuru was a bit nervous but also excited for the big event.
That's it for today, guys, and thanks for watching the video. Stay tuned for next chapter. Until then, goodbye.